Jessie Hughes Murillo was the kind of student that teachers and parents alike dreamed about. She was kind, compassionate, and caring. One day, Jessie was walking through the hallways just as she had done every other day of her life and was approached by a teacher searching for a hall pass. As Jessie responded and gave her a hall pass, the teacher made a comment that made Jessie feel uncomfortable, a comment about her body. As Jessie went home that night, she found extreme difficulty in sleeping. The next day, she dreaded going to school. Throughout the next several weeks, she found herself with similar encounters with this teacher. And as time progressed, Jessie began to fall apart. That is until she consulted an administrator and the actions were seized. Jessie, like millions of others, had become a victim of sexual harassment. Sexual harassment is an issue of epidemic proportions within our schools, an issue that can and will be stopped. Within my speech, first I will discuss what exactly is sexual harassment. Second, the gravity of its effects. And finally, what can we personally do in order to stop sexual harassment? First, what exactly is sexual harassment? According to its dictionary definition, sexual harassment is unwanted sexual conduct. It is further subdivided into 3 different categories. The first, verbal. Unwanted sexual comments or rumors, such as that Jessie faced. The second, physical. Groping and touching and grabbing. And the final, being visual, sexual images or gestures. Considering this definition as well as Jessie's story, I personally find it appalling that 44% of students at the high school level declared that sexual harassment was no big deal. Now let us now consider what exactly the effects of sexual harassment are. In 2008, Brigham Young University conducted a study in which they concluded that 40 to 50% of students within the span of 1 year were sexually harassed. Taking that back to my own school of around 600 students, that's 240 to 300 students that were harassed within 1 year. And what will these students face? Often these students face an unwillingness to go to sleep, resistance to go to school, affecting their academics and thus their future, as well as a wavering self-esteem. And yet it does not stop there. Instead, sexual harassment progresses, and in fact, 92% of males and 80% of females who have been sexually harassed admit to harassing themselves. And thus a vicious cycle begins, a cycle in which the victim becomes the harasser, and the harasser, the victim. We must thus stop it at that initial point in which it begins. Stop at that initial point with so much potential to stop harming so many people. Bringing me to my third and final point. What can we personally do in order to stop sexual harassment? First, we must educate. The AAUW have done an excellent job in the past few years accomplishing exactly this. In 2001, 2006, and yet again in 2012, they've devoted their campaign to sexual harassment and its prevention. Through pamphlets, reports, and speech contests, such as my own, they have prevented thousands of children and women and men, all from experiencing sexual harassment. And yet, education is not the sole action that we must take. Instead, we must develop ourselves and realize that teachers, administrators, and school employees must too take action. Title V stipulates that each school should have a designated individual who's equipped with dealing with sexual harassment. This individual opens a line of communication between students and teachers, one that otherwise often seems so daunting. Having someone to talk to, having someone to relay their experiences and understand that it's not their fault, that this happens quite often, and then finally, trying to prevent it. And yet, where does the real responsibility lie? It lies within the students participating in this contest, the students that walk the halls of our high schools every single day, and ultimately, students worldwide. As students, we are given the unique responsibility in which we view our peers every day. We are forced with a decision. The decision to ignore, to divert, or to report. Let us stop ignoring. Let us instead reach out and share the information that we have learned throughout our time at being on this earth and understand what exactly the gravity of the situation is. We must begin to take action as students and as people, as parents, and understand that sexual harassment is a big deal. That sexual harassment affects many and that it can, if we are willing, can be stopped. Sexual harassment is no small issue, and therefore it will require no small or easy solution. Instead, it will require a collaborative effort from parents, from students, and from administrators in order to search consistently for a solution. I stand here today not simply with a speech, but instead with a challenge. A challenge to the audience and a challenge to people worldwide. A challenge to join me and millions of others in continuing the fight to stop sexual harassment.